Hey guys and girls, Bored Now back with you, and for day 5 of my October horror watches, I will be going back to a cult classic and a real gem. It is, of course, Carnival of Souls from 1962. It's sort of a forgotten film which has been rediscovered in the last few years. You can see a heavy influence of it on people like David Lynch, also George A. Romero with the Night of the Living Dead film. Very influential, very strange, very oddball, but really eerie horror. The style of it and the mood, you can tell, had a big influence on people like Lynch and Romero. It's directed by Herk Harvey, I believe that's how you say the name, which is a classic kind of oddball indie director's name. And I recently got it on a cool Criterion edition. There you see the image with the lead on the front and the sort of fairground in the background. Plays a big part of the film. Lots of nice special editions if you get this one. And I know they do these in numbers, so this is number 63 for the record of the Criterion collection. And it's a film I had to do, really, if I'm going to do a month-long horror watches. It's one that really stands out. And I think it gets better every time I see it. It looks glorious on Blu-ray in high definition as well. So it's one of those where it has a very simple story, a very simple setup, but it's kind of the weirdness and what the lead character goes through along the way, which really makes it such a distinct, disturbing and unique film, I think. So the lead actress, who I think is really, really good, she's Candace Hilligoss. I'm looking at. She plays Mary, so the setup to the film is that she's out driving with some friends. Some jerky guys come up beside them and they're taunting them. It's like three girls and then guys in the cars, and they randomly go for like this sort of race type thing along the highway. Mary's like one of the passengers, and they crash off the side of the bridge into the river, and they appear to be all dead, but lo and behold, somehow Mary has survived, so she's dragged out of the wreckage onto the land. So then the film sort of follows the effects on her throughout, and the fact that she seems to walk out in a daze. She seems to walk out in this dreamlike sort of state where she's very cut off from the world, very unaware of things happening around her, but slowly things start to take effect and you start to see that she is still, she's in this dreamlike sort of haze, but the world around her is starting to creep her out and get to her as a result of what happened. So she's a church organist, because of course she is, because it makes it so bizarre and weird. It makes her kind of feel like this sort of very niche oddball type character from the start. So she's set, because the movie is set in Kansas, so classic small town setting, and Mary is supposed to take a job at another church doing the music, and the guy at the church says, because they know about the accident, asks her, are you alright to still do this, to still take on the job, the accident won't affect you? And she's like, no, that's fine, I'll still do it. And there's this whole debate, because she makes it clear that she only does it for the money. She's not religious at all, and the church don't seem to mind that. But along the way, she's kind of having her finger waggled at by the people at the church, and there is some judgment on her throughout the film. But the film, I think, because it's meant to be in this dreamlike sort of world, this dreamlike sort of state that Mary's in, I think it constantly plays it quite straight, and it makes it hard for you as the viewer to really decide to decode whether everyone who's talking to her and what Mary's seeing is accurate. So at a certain point, certain people like the church, there's also a therapist who Mary sees. They may or may not be judging her. They may or may not be sinister, or it could just be in her head. So it's played quite straight like that. But I think the film is using those very simple setups to really play with themes of religion, to play with themes of authority, gender as well. So Mary goes to this town for this new job as an organist, and she takes up a room locally where there's hardly anyone there. There's a landlady who she has a bit of, who again is a very old-fashioned type person who kind of frowns on Mary a lot because Mary's very distant, and there's this kind of creepy sort of guy who's constantly trying to get Mary to go out with him, and he looks like one of these classic type 60s type, you can imagine like the Fonzie being modelled on him, except the Fonzie obviously has a bit more of a stability and charm to him. But anyway, he's constantly trying to ask Mary out, and over the course of the film she kind of agrees to go out with him eventually, but there's always this unease with her around him. She can never settle down, and that's sort of an interesting side, because from very on you can tell this is a very sleazy guy. He's just looking to get with her, not too interested in a relationship. But I think there are certain moments where you think, well, maybe he's an alright sort of guy, but I think it plays with that. But it's all about Mary's unease and just how uncomfortable she is with human interaction. And it's all just really played out in this dreamlike, surreal sort of state with very little sound or music. But I think the whole her being a church organist is sort of crucial, because most of the time when you do have music, it is that sort of really high-pitched sort of church organ. So there's a sense, and it's ringing out in Mary's head. You get a lot of naturalistic, ambient sort of street-type sounds, but you do also get a lot of scenes where Mary's just wandering along like a ghost down the street, and where there's no sound literally where there should be sound, so it does feel like an out-of-body surreal experience. It really sells you on that idea that Mary is potentially in a dreamland. She could potentially be dead in reality, but just then what has happened to her has really affected her and really cut her off from the world, and I think that's why it's sort of a neat little detail. Then she's just this church organist who has no interest in religion, because she is this figure who just likes to go from town to town on assignment. She's not really interested in human interaction, although I think in the film's case it's sort of saying that's partly because of what's happened to her. But yeah, it does play with themes of religion, with themes of hierarchy and communication, I think, and the world around us. The way modernity even in the 60s was probably starting to become a big sort of factor. So these ideas of how human nature and the human condition becomes fragmented because of these growing elements. I think that's why you have this sense of Mary just feeling just like a figure that's used for the world's enjoyment, or just then she just feels disconnected from the world. And I think it's probably no coincidence, and she's a woman, and obviously this guy's sort of hitting on her constantly. I think it's just playing up the fact that she does have this very kind of standard for the time female, blonde, pretty sort of damsel type look, if you like. I think it's definitely playing that aspect up than she is just treated as a figure. She's just treated as an entity, almost a body sort of thing. And I think that's where the whole out of body stuff comes from. I will say I think Candace Hilligoss Gross is wonderful. She's really great. She really carries the film. It's a really tough part to play, but she really pulls it off very, very well. She's got the demeanour for it and the face, and it's really good because she's in pretty much every shot. So you can see, as I said, the influence of Lynch and Romero, or the influence it had on them. Obviously, a lot of the films set in these small sort of towns, but these industrial type towns, which obviously Lynch has been very interested in. When you think of Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks as, for examples. So a lot of wandering around these small, quirky sort of towns, and you get these shots that show the sort of the kind of quirky oddball characters around town as they look at Mary as she goes by. And a lot of playing with imageries, a lot of gothic type imageries at times, so faces appearing from the water. And it is a very creepy, unnerving film that will get under your skin, so at various times. So what sort of happens, and I won't actually give away the ending in this case, but what happens is Mary starts seeing this strange man keep appearing in her images. She sees him in the mirror. There's some really well handled like fake out scares where at one point in the first scene where the guy has he's sort of asked her out, he's noticed and she's new, and it's a creepy scene, but he eventually backs off because she makes it clear she wants to be alone for tonight. She's plans to eat in her room. And then he goes away, and then Mary suddenly, she drifts off into the hall, and then she sees a guy who appears to be dead, a guy, I think he's in like a sort of a vicar's sort of outfit. Just appear from nowhere, this ghost-like, ghoulish sort of figure, and it obviously freaks her out, and then she runs back into the room, and then there's she's locked the door, but there's this knock, and she kind of thinks it's him or the other guy, and then it's the landlady. But Mary then asks who's the other guy staying down the hall, and that's when the landlady says there is no other guy. But throughout the film, at various times, this other guy will pop up. So it's a very non-Hillier film. I mean, in some ways, it's a very straightforward plot, and it's more about the mood and atmosphere. But on the other hand, it's this bizarre random plot where nothing quite makes sense, and that makes sense by the end, if you like, when it's revealed what's happening to Mary. But you have to think of it in this very DreamWorks sort of logic type, the mood of it and everything. But so for example, because she's had an incident on the street, she then wanders into like a counselor's or a therapist sort of office. And again, I think the film is kind of showing these like hierarchies and this breakdown between women and men. Essentially, it's at this point showing that largely white middle class men would be therapists. They would, at this point in societies, they would have this sort of job, and that there would be a barrier, there would be a hierarchy between them and obviously women who would have the lesser paid jobs, if you like, and often would be maybe expected to stay at home. So that's actually interesting with Mary, because she is more of this drifter. She is maybe, and again, it's down to her state of mind possibly, but she is this this woman who doesn't want human connection. She's this person who actually doesn't want to conform to the norm. She doesn't want to just settle down and do what women were expected to at the time. So I think it does say some really interesting stuff about gender. But yeah, she goes to this therapist, and the fact that he is this kind of, this typical middle class sort of white guy, he kind of has this air of importance to him, the way she talks. And the film is clever, the way it makes such scenes and such dialogue seem sort of quite sinister and untrusting as well, and it plays on that sort of tension from Mary's perspective. Is this someone I can trust? So I think it is making a comment on gender and about class and various things, but then there's a creepy little moment later on, because when she first sees the therapist, he has his back to her in the chair, so like the chair is facing Mary, and he's like, he says he just needed to turn away to make notes, and then he reappears. But then in the second scene later on, where she goes to visit him, where actually she's done it a bit more voluntarily, because at this point things are just starting to break down and she feels like she needs some help. Again, the chair is facing her, like the back of the chair, and then she's talking to him, and for a while there's no reply, and you're thinking, well, is this guy dead, or what's going on? And then the chair turns around, and lo and behold, she sees that man again. And there's this whole scene towards the end of the film where Mary really sort of trips out. She wanders off into this deserted sort of fairground, and just sees these faces anywhere, everywhere, these sort of dead faces, so on every person she sees. But she also sees different people she's encountered in the film. So at one point in this dreamlike sort of sequence, Mary sees the guy who's been hitting on her in like his sort of face on one of these bodies of these sort of these dead demon like these souls, as said, Carnival of Souls it's representing or referencing the theme park or the fairground she sort of goes to, and about what's essentially happening in the film. But yeah, you get these scenes of her going into a diner where she goes with the guy, and really bizarre, unique use of music in the diner, and it's a truly creepy film. There's some really well handled set pieces, but it's just the overall mood and how surreal it is and dreamlike, and the way it plays with images, the way it plays with sounds. It's a glorious looking film, just the use of black and white. You cannot imagine this being filmed in colour. It just has this this beautiful, dreamlike, just sort of glow to it in a way. This it's hard to describe without trying to get pretentious, but it does look fantastic. It fits the mood of the film. It will take you on a dreamlike ride. It will leave you in a daze, as it did to me last night. I needed to compose myself after I'd watched the film, and I think that really puts you in the frame of mind of Mary. It's a true oddity. It's one of the most bizarre films you'll ever see, but as a horror movie, one of the most creepy and distinct as well. And there's some stuff in there. There's some really interesting themes. So I really like this film. I think it really stands out. I think if you're a fan of Lynch, if you're a fan of early George A. Romero, then it should really tick all the boxes. It's a great cult film, so I think any horror fan should see it, really. So that's Carnival of Souls, and you know what? Especially on this viewing where it really had it really had an effect on me. It really, the psychology of it and just how creepy it was. I'm going to give it a 10, a perfect 10 out of 10. I do think this is some kind of masterpiece and a must for all horror fans. So yeah, 10 for me. If you've seen it, please let me know your comments below. I don't think I've spoiled too much, so you could possibly watch this without having seen the film, but all the better if you have seen the film. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So this has been day 5, and hopefully over the weekend I'm planning a live stream for some watches as well. Maybe a couple of Chucky films is the plan, but we'll see how it goes, and I'll definitely have another horror movie review up soon. But this has been Carnival of Souls, and let me know your thoughts. As I said, thanks for watching. Goodbye.